Hello, everyone. Welcome to Marigold Live. Thank you for joining us today on this lovely Wednesday afternoon. Bridget and I launched Marigold Live last week, and we're coming online Wednesdays in April to share insights for marketers in the cannabis space and give everyone a chance to connect and reconnect, as we could all use a little bit more of that in our lives right now. Today, we are talking about cannabis and social good, which is a really hot topic. I mean, during this time, we've seen some really awesome initiatives by some interesting companies, including ones in our cannabis space. And I would like to throw over to our panelists to quickly introduce themselves and give us some more information about what they do. Bridget, did you want to start?
Sure. Hi, I'm Bridget Hoffer. Thanks for the introduction, Katie. I'm Katie's partner. She's my other significant other, as I like to think of her, and we've been on this journey together for the past 4 years at Marigold PR. My background is in media and marketing and communications and branding. I have a lot of experience, formerly responsible for the communications over at CBC, and then worked with some agencies from there, and have had a lot of experience with CSR and social good. So I'm really excited to talk to the panelists today.
Fabulous. Margaret, over to you.
Hey everyone, Margaret Sinnell. I have many hats. Today I'm here representing Canni Brands. I'm head of growth for the organization. Have an interesting connection to Marigold. You've been a great partner to us in Canni Brands, and just an outstanding partner. So love to being here to support you. My background in entrepreneurial startups and corporate has largely been in strategy and marketing, and entered the cannabis space just over a year ago. I can't believe it. It feels like a decade ago, and happily have been immersed in this amazing industry, but do feel incredibly connected to the conversation about social good, particularly based on our brand promise, but I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But I'm thrilled to be here with this amazing group of wonderful women.
Thank you, Margaret. And Margaret brings both Canadian and US insights to our conversation today. So we're really excited to have her. Trish, over to you.
Hi, I'm Trish Lackey. I am the Director of Customer Experience with Superette. We're a retailer in the cannabis space that has been open just over a year in our one Ottawa store. I oversee, like lots of startups, a bunch of different things, wear a lot of different hats, but primarily now I'm overseeing our customer experience from a people-to-people perspective, so in-store, how people are experiencing that, so overseeing training, how the customer service experience happens both digitally and in person, as well as our corporate social responsibility program, so overseeing how we connect with our communities wherever we open our stores. My background is a little bit of a weird kind of pathway to cannabis. I actually started out in musical theater when I graduated from post-secondary, but I have had a big hand in a lot of small Canadian entrepreneurs that have grown to be really big. So David's Tea, Sage, and then most recently Haiku Brands and Tokyo Smoke. So I've been in the cannabis space for about 2 years now.
Wow, and you've worked on some really awesome brands. That's very cool, and we're really excited to have you here, Trish. Superette has built quite the name for itself as cannabis retail and really in the forefront. So thank you very much for joining us. Tracy, do you want to go through a little bit of the housekeeping and cover how we're going to approach the poll?
Absolutely. So thanks to all of our panelists for joining today, and I will be supporting on some of the technical pieces for today's webinar. I just want to thank everybody for joining. And as you can see at the bottom of your screen, you should have the options to chat. So your chat will pop up on the right-hand side throughout today's call. So this is a great opportunity to network, a new way to network for everybody and engage. We encourage that everybody shares their social handles, how we can connect with you, just so everybody is connected even outside of this call. We are going to run a quick little poll to kick off today's conversation. And as well, there'll be an opportunity at the end to do ask your questions for the panelists today. So there is an opportunity to, or there's a tab at the bottom for the Q&A. So just place your question on there, and I just ask that you let us know who that question is directed towards. And that's all I have. So thanks for everybody for joining today.
Fabulous. So we're going to start with a poll today. And so we like to throw this out at the beginning of the conversation and get a sense of where everyone's at. And the question here is around your experience with CSR. Is this something you've worked on in the past? Is it something that's on your radar now? We have 3 options for you, and we'd love for everyone to take a quick vote, including our panelists, and we can see where we land. Over to you, Tracy.
Yep, absolutely. So you can see, as Katie mentioned, so if you wanted to start voting, we'll end the poll shortly. It's great to see so many people joining in today. I see Jordana, Jen Larry. Hi, Jen. Hi, Nora.
Is the poll live, Tracy? I don't see it.
The poll is live, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, we got a few votes in so far. Thanks, everybody. We'll just keep it up for another minute here. Hi, Hillary. Mother's Mary is with us today.
Some folks can't see the poll, so I don't
Yeah.
know if that's, yeah.
I can't see it either.
You're
Yeah,
not seeing it?
that's
Okay, maybe I'll end it here. So we do have, so there's lots for new to the conversation.
Okay.
Great. Which is amazing.
Great. And we find at Marigold a lot of our clients are in a very similar position. I mean, we wear a lot of different hats in cannabis, and we come from a very diverse background. And, you know, it's a very critical time in our history right now, what's going on in the world. And it's been really inspiring. I mean, the Growth Op shared an article about the different ways that some cannabis brands are supporting, you know, giving some of their equipment and their masks to people on the front lines. And that's been really exciting to hear. You know, I think let's just jump in here to the first question. So over to you, Margaret. Why is CSR important for companies? And what are the benefits, and are there any risks? Let's talk about both sides of the coin there.
So, you know, I was reading recently that how an organization responds in a crisis is often a defining moment for that organization. And I certainly do believe that, you know, the connection between your brand, what it stands for, and advocating for social good at a time where there are difficulties is incredibly important. Having said that, I would actually say something slightly different, which is, you know, what your brand stands for from its inception. And the why someone should engage with you is absolutely critical, irrespective of whether there's a crisis or not. So, you know, people buy from purpose-driven organizations, and you know, having a position around corporate responsibility, advocating for a particular area of either education, focus, engagement, I think connects a brand and humanizes a brand. So, you know, I think it's incredibly important to have some dimension of the why as a part of your brand narrative, and it should come from a place that's credible and definable for not only the organization that's being birthed, but also the community that you serve and the stakeholders that are around it. You know, I hadn't thought through, you know, the risks of it. I personally believe it's incredibly important, but you also have to have sensitivities on how you engage. And that's why you need really, really good partners like Marigold. How was that?
Thanks, Margaret. That was perfect.
I did not practice that. I just want you to know I did not practice that.
Okay.
Over to you, Trish. Similar to what Margaret was saying about having it be part of your why, I think it should be part of the blueprint of your company. So this is the human connection that you are creating between your brand and the public. So if that is part of your company's vision and purpose from the outset, then you know that you're creating something really authentic when you're creating this type of program. I think really that this should be part of your identity, not just kind of the afterthought. As far as benefits, I mean, they're pretty standard. You're building trust with your customers as well as the community that lives outside the four walls. For us, that means the people that aren't just coming into our store to shop for cannabis, but reaching out and actually making a connection with the community at large, and being a really favorable partner and neighbor within the Ottawa community right now and Toronto community soon. It earns you media coverage by actual earning because you're doing good things, and it actually involves our community. In our particular case, we're actually bringing people in to be part of the social responsibility program. As far as risks, it's really just about communication and making sure that you have the proper communication. Otherwise, you can be seen as inauthentic, particularly in these unprecedented times. You want to make sure that whatever your messaging is, it's super clear that you're out there for the community.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, over to you, Bridget.
Yeah, just building on both what Trish and Margaret were saying, you know, I see CSR, a great CSR program, almost like a halo effect. You know, it builds a likability and an emotional connection, and it also in terms of a halo effect, it positions you in a very positive way and differentiates you from your other, you know, competitors or other people in the space, because you're trying to achieve a positive impact and people connect to that. And so I think it's important to ensure that your values match with the organizations that you want to work with, because that also demonstrates kind of what you stand for in this world, and especially during pre-COVID and during COVID, etc. I think in terms of the benefits, most millennials say that they're going to buy from a company that they understand what they stand for. And so they feel that if it reflects their values, they'll support companies, for example, supporting environmental or issues, companies doing their part. And 9 in 10 consumers in the US say they're likely to purchase from a purpose-driven company. It's going to help them make that decision. So I see those as big events that it can be increased revenue, it can increase brand likability and trust, because it builds trust. I think the risks that we face are not doing the due diligence on making sure it's traceable, what you say is going to happen, and everything's measured, and there's standards and effects that you can, you know, put those KPIs beside. And sometimes it may not resonate with your customer, what you're choosing. So that's a risk you have to take. Like, Katie and I might choose something, but some of our clients may choose other, you have to make sure that you're all standing together and working in the same pattern.
I agree. And we're getting some really interesting conversations here. So our friend Nora, hi Nora, thanks for joining us again, says, it's key. People buy from purpose-built organizations. It's really resonating with people. It's very important for our communities. And a little shout out over to you, Trish. Our friend Talia from High Vibe said that you used to be her trainer at Sage.
Hi, Talia.
Small world. All right, so let's dive in here and let's throw over to Margaret and Trish to talk about their programs. Trish, did you want to jump in and tell the audience what Superette's up to in your community?
Sure, yeah. So for 2020, we made the commitment back in December that we were going to donate 1 can of food for every cannabis package that was returned at our Wellington store. And our goal was 60,000 packages and therefore 60,000 cans. We're also committing 100 hours of community service with the Ottawa Food Bank as well. And that's coming from our store team, as well as our home team here in Toronto is doing community service at the Daily Bread Food Bank. So those are the 2 pieces that are connected to our 2020 social responsibility program. But the big one is the in-store and driving people in with their recycled packaging.
That is just amazing because it's twofold: sustainable, recycle. We know packaging is a real challenge in our industry, and then giving back locally. And you have seen quite a fair amount of PR and social conversations around this amazing work that you're doing.
Yeah, it's been really awesome because, like you said, the twofold or the two-pronged approach to it is that people were already complaining about that packaging and what's happening and why can't people reduce it and what happens if I put it into my recycling, does it actually get recycled? So we wanted to make sure that we were shining a light on what TerraCycle is doing in the responsible recycling of this packaging and encouraging people to bring it in to actually be wholly responsibly recycled and turned into these plastic pellets. So that was kind of part one. And then our inspiration has always been that bodega, diner, lunch style approach within our stores. So nourishment has always been really important to us. And one of our part-time team members actually was the one that raised his hand and said, back in August of last year, I actually saw that Food Bank is going through a really tough time right now. Why don't we start our community service hours there? And then everything just kind of snowballed and merged together.
That's incredible. And, you know, a shout out to the food banks and a shout out to Food Banks Canada, a friend of Marigold. You know, they're doing a $150 million raise right now to support Canadians struggling. So, you know, it's really cool to see how you can support locally or nationally. And I think that's really motivating too, to know that no matter how big or small your company is, whether you're focused on a community or the nation, there's different tactics you can do. And so Trish, how did you decide on you know, the Ottawa Food Bank?
Yeah, like I said, it was initially an inspiration from a team member who had already done a lot of work for the food bank. And then once we started doing the community service with them, and our team went out and did some harvesting of a lot of vegetables last October, and we really saw what an impact it had to actually have our team in person there. We wanted to marry the in-person team approach that they could get out of the store and take part in this program as well, not just collecting the packages in our store. So that partnership kind of grew naturally for us to really love working with the Ottawa Food Bank, and then understanding how many people we could affect, because our goal is 60,000 cans, and the Ottawa Food Bank sees about 39,000 families per year. So we knew that if we created a goal that could reach potentially every single family in Ottawa, that was something that was bringing nourishment to our communities surrounding us. So we were excited about that.
Beautiful.
Amazing. And employee engagement is a really interesting part of CSR and social good. It isn't an expensive avenue. It makes a big difference at the charities that you're or nonprofits that you're partnering with. And, you know, on the PR front, it provides great impact and Instagrammable, thoughtful moments, you know, people making a difference. So employee engagement is always an interesting piece.
Yeah, and it's also really great to be able to empower our team members to come up with these ideas and be that source of kind of badassery that we're trying to get up to around here. So being able to take their feedback and where they have passion and where they want to connect with the community was really exciting for us as well.
Yeah, fabulous. Over to you, Margaret. Canni Brands has a few social good CSR initiatives, so congratulations on that. Can you take us through some of your strategies?
Sure. So for our audience, I'm not sure, you know, I have had the pleasure of engaging with the community, the Marigold and community in the past, but just to remind you, so Canni Brands is a health and wellness CBD brand. We are oriented to the sports, fitness, and wellness market. You know, we advocate for natural solutions to common problems. So, you know, we are CBD plus nutrients and essential oils and vitamins. We are sold in the US, very different than Canada. So we have the latitude to be able to market our experiences, which are formulated against, you know, to support sleep and anxiety and energy and, you know, mental clarity. Why I bring that up is, you know, everything that we stand for is associated with advocating for, you know, CBD for health. And, you know, as Trish had said, you know, the way in which Superette's oriented their CSR initiatives, you know, over a year ago or about a year ago, we engaged with a charity of choice, A4C, which is Athletes for Care, which their entire modus operandi is to engage professional retired athletes to go into the communities based on their experience in using cannabis and CBD to support their health needs and advocate for, this as an alternative to opioids or, traditional over-the-counter medication or prescription medication. And, we believe that educating, engaging the community, engaging with athletes, sharing their stories, and supporting them through our vehicles as well was a great way to collaborate and engage with our community, and also do something that we feel is really, really important. So we support that and work with them, do events with them, and engage with their athletes. But I do want to, I fast forward to sort of what's happening right now with coronavirus and COVID and, COVID-19. And we, to sort of the concept of social good and, what we felt we could do. So we pivoted and kind of brought together the leadership very, a few weeks ago when we sort of started to see this thing emerging. And we did a few things that I feel pretty, quite proud of. And to your point, I think it was you, Katie, that said it. You have to, when you're doing social good initiatives, you have to make sure that it comes from an authentic place, right? And it is something that, people understand why you're doing it and what the purpose is, and you believe in it as employees, stakeholders, et cetera. So, the first thing we did, because we're a health and wellness brand, and we know that people are suffering from anxiety and sleep issues, et cetera, going through this very difficult time. We, and I know it sounds odd, but we took a pretty major slash to our prices on our website, because we just said, we need to be able to furnish our products in a way that, a bit more accessible. That's, one small piece. The bigger piece though was, we have great partners, and one of our partners, we have a particular dosing technology, which is through a spray. And we collaborated with one of our partners to establish a non-CBD based sanitizer, which is very easy to put in your pocket, provides the health benefits of sanitizing your hands, is in the, is from the partner that we work with, but we're putting it into every purchase that anybody makes on our website, because that's how we engage. We don't engage through stores, we engage through online. And everyone who puts in a purchase receives a sanitizer as a part of, no cost to them, just, trying to make sure that we continue to support the health and wellness of our folks and our consumers. Finally, we're very big in the sport community, and the NHL has deep connections to the roots of our organization. We have an ambassador, Paul Bissonnette, he's well known to the sporting community in terms of his engagement in his national podcast, et cetera. He came to us, because he has an affinity to the East Coast, Players League. And, these are athletes in the minor leagues that have now been impacted as a result of their season being canceled. And this is how they were achieving income. So, we decided that through our affiliation with Paul, because we care about Paul and what he's done for us and our deep roots into this community, that we would donate to their needs, as well as any purchase that happens over the next 30 days on our website, we will be donating to them. So, when you say strategies, each one of these initiatives comes from a place of, our brand promise, but also it was really important to our employees. We kind of got together and said, like, what can we do that will help? And so we, initiated these activities, and we feel, we've had good response, but more importantly, I think it's the right thing to do.
I think that's so incredible. And I love the hand sanitizer idea. It's relevant, it's important to everyone. And also it's been hard to find. So, it's perfect. Bridget, over to you. What are some of the essential pieces of a CSR program that brands should be considering as they develop their plan?
Well, just building on the amazing things that Cannabis brands and Superette are doing, you really have to think about developing a criteria almost of how you're going to decide who you're going to work with. It comes from your employees and it comes from your consumers and your partners, etc. But you also have to ensure, like the East Coast Hockey League and, you know, food banks, etc., you know, that you want to deal with ethical organizations and that they're going to contribute to the improvement of society, and that you're partnering with someone who's going to make a difference. So together you're going to make a difference. And so when you're considering all those pieces, you should look at, you know, almost like a congruence and a relevancy between your organization and the organization, and ensure that, you know, you're going to make a difference, you're going to help them make a difference, and together you're going to benefit the society. At the same time, you also need to think about how you're going to allocate funds against it. If you need to think about it almost as a CSR, as part of your marketing plan or your PR plan, and that you're going to deliver what you say you're going to do, and you're going to put some metrics against it, so that it makes it makes an impact. And you know, I was noticing in the chat, people are talking about where things might not be going as planned. I think you have to be very careful in terms of your planning, your ethical and responsible considerations, and then you both have to work hard to try and meet the objectives. But you really need to have clear objectives as you start out, and build your case as you move along.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to jump into, you know, what this all means for consumers. But before I do, we have a question from the audience. And Bridget, I'll throw this one to you. Not all CSR pieces are interesting to consumers. So how do you share the stuff that isn't necessarily sexy or cool?
Well, I think that goes back to maybe what we were talking a little bit before, because often in B2B or CSR that isn't going to touch consumers, it's also going to talk about what your company stands for. And CSR, you know, reflects back on what you stand for and what matters for you. So, you know, there's lots of things in every company that may not be sexy, but they're also very important in terms of determining the moral compass and the direction of where a company's going. So I think you have to balance that. So you need to communicate why you're choosing the organizations you are going to choose through what you stand for, your values, and how you're going to be successful, and ultimately how it's going to help the organization, but also help your business.
Great. And Margaret, over to you, and then Trish, how has the response been from a consumer standpoint to your social good initiatives, and any recommendations, kind of as a two-parter here? You know, any ideas around simple tactics that some brands that might be, you know, cash strapped at this moment, any ideas around simple executions that they could, you know, do that will resonate with their consumer and their audience?
Yeah, so on my response, we've had outstanding response. I mean, they depending on which initiative, you know, as it relates to A4C, you know, there is I won't go into each one, but the response has been very positive, whether it was online engagement or comments through our social. You know, we have aligned to issues that matter to the consumers that we serve and our stakeholders. So, you know, we have received, whether it's notes of thanks or, you know, positive thumbs up, likes, and, you know, a variety of communications that have come our way as a result of initiatives that we've taken. And that's obviously, you know, you want that, because then, you know, you're on track and you're aligned with, you know, as Bridget said, your brand, you have a credible, you know, the element to which you are creating social awareness or engagement or social good is aligned to the brand and the promise that you're making. And if you're getting the consumer feedback that's positive, it's telling you that you're on the right track, I guess is what I was saying. Just to, you know, if you're cash strapped, so this is an interesting you know, point in time. You know, as simple as it sounds, I think it's important to engage your employees and your stakeholders to find out a couple things. What are they doing personally in their own lives, and or, you know, like what initiatives are really, I think Bridget, you were saying there's certain things that might be important to your employee base, And, you know, I found, I've run CSR initiatives over the years, and, you know, as a brand, you can identify what you support, and you stand behind it. It has alignment. It's strategically relevant. It creates, as you said, Bridget, resonance with your community. You can rally behind it. And it's very important to, I believe, have that purpose oriented connection. But one of the things I've done over my years of experiences as it relates to social good was I would always carve out not only, you know, there's the corporate sponsored engagement initiatives, but then you bolster this employee, you give people the latitude, engagement, and support associated with those causes that they may feel are really important, and encourage them and or participate and or trumpet. So example, A4C is our company's initiative associated with promoting CBD solutions for sport. Paul, our ambassador, came to us at a time of need in a community that he cares about and said, you know, is this something that you would be supporting us? Another individual who was, you know, in our group said, you know, boy, I know that our supplier or partner could do something around the hand sanitizer. That wasn't a corporate initiative. That was somebody who came with an idea, and we all rallied around it. It was probably Alan, I think. We all rallied around it and said, this is a great idea if we can do this, right, at no cost to our customers. So I think creating some vehicle for your employees to innovate and give some ideas, and, you know, what are they doing, and is there anything we can put our efforts to support, but also having your own sort of corporate umbrella of initiatives that you really put your time behind. That's how I kind of balance it, I think.
Awesome.
Right.
And Trish, over to you. What's the impact been for on your consumer base? And do you have any advice for those that are looking at CSR initiatives but are feeling a little cash strapped?
Yeah, absolutely. As far as our consumer base, we've been really fortunate because it's actually a bit of a pivot point for us when people complain about packaging size or things, how things are coming to them right now. So we're able to actually bring it up and say, well, when you do bring it back in, we're gonna put our money where our mouth is and put that back out into the community. So it's a really great kind of double eyebrow moment from a customer to kind of go, okay, well, okay, all right, that's really interesting. So we see lots of kudos on social, especially when we post updates or polls of asking people when they think, or what point they think we're getting to our limit. So that's been really exciting to have some engagement, and some of our kind of largest engaged posts are about our CSR, which is also really exciting to see. I think it was Bridget that brought up having really incredible partners. So for people that are a little bit more cash strapped, we've actually had people partner in with us and kind of tag along onto our program. So different sections, or being able to offer a match for a certain month, or however many packages are coming in this month, we'll double that kind of outreach. But also we've thrown some events to allow different companies within the cannabis sector to put a little bit of money into our initiative and kind of bump up that level as well. So aligning yourselves with other brand partners that can allow you to own a piece of their CSR. If you're just testing the waters and you don't have both money or people resources, that can be a really effective way to not only build your partnerships within the industry, but to also kind of dip a toe and test things out. If you're really strapped, there's lots of things that you can do that don't require money, that really require man time. And one of the easiest things is to be out in your community doing a community cleanup, especially now when we're seeing like lots of rubber gloves around. That it's really easy to grab gloves and a garbage bag and do some pickup. Make a difference just that day.
Yeah, I love that. We've got a couple comments here from the audience. Michael at Eco420. Hi, Michael. Thanks for joining us. He says, Superette looks like a high-end grocery store, so it's a great match, your relationship with with food and nourishment, the food bank there. Interesting question here, Bridget. I'll throw this over to you. So, you know, we do hear a lot about millennials and how they feel about CSR. But the question here is, are boomers as concerned with CSR, or is it specifically for millennials?
I'll speak for my peeps.
Quick, Bridget.
I believe that everyone's interested in CSR. I don't think that that anyone isn't. But at the same time, I think that it's up to all of us to really focus on the changes in brand thinking and in brand landscape, because I think that there's an opportunity, and maybe it's a bit of a PR opportunity as well, but to raise awareness through CSR of what your brand stands for and means, whether it's through your PR campaign, whether you're doing stories about it, your social channels. And I think that it will, a lot of people in the 40 plus market or 45 or 50 plus market, they have a lot of brand loyalty, and so they don't often hear or see some new adjustments or competitors, and they're focusing on the brands they know. So I think there's an opportunity for disruption amongst and amid boomers to tell the story, because I think that there is an opportunity for affinity with products that have a strong CSR campaign.
Can I speak to that from retailer perspective as well? We've actually seen our age group skews a little bit more boomer, to be totally honest. So it's actually a really interesting turning point for us as well, coming in and being that storefront that could have been seen as something a little bit risky or unwanted in a neighborhood, for people to come in and those are the people that are saying, oh, the packaging, and then we're turning around and saying, well, this is actually part of our corporate social responsibility. That can also change attitudes and really be a loyalty point as well.
Exactly. And when you look at it, particularly in the cannabis retail space, where, a lot of boomers are overcoming the destigmatization, there's a lot of interest. Yeah. And again, new product introduction, new opportunity to talk about CSR. Completely agree with you, Trish.
Mm-hmm. I think another audience question here from Michael at Eco420, and this one's for you, Trish. So Eco420 is in Superette store, and so the question here is, how can a brand or product help support local stores that carry their brand or product, especially during the coronavirus time? Should we be helping to try to get people to visit the store now? Is it appropriate? And he's saying, for example, Superette carries Eco420 filters, and I don't know how to best support them during this crazy time.
Great. I mean, we are easily accessible if you want to reach out to us to talk to us about how you can partner. But I think the best way is to highlight how we're taking care of our own backyard during this time, and really taking care of our team members who are putting themselves on the front lines and going in and serving people through the click and collect manner. So highlighting when we're reopening that we are open for click and collect, that we are taking care of our team, that when you go, we're organized, we're making sure people are physically distancing themselves, we're sanitizing everything all the time, we're on scheduled hand washing breaks. So being able to promote that we are doing our part to be responsible retailers in this time and take care of both our people and the people that come and see us. That's really helpful to us for sure. Mm-hmm. Especially because our CSR has kind of been temporarily suspended because we're not taking packaging in right now. So anything that we can do to keep our customers coming back to our store during this time, that when things get back to normal, we can jump things back up again really quickly.
Yeah. One of the comments from our audience, Danielle from our Marigold team, is she's pointing out that Gen Z is actually proving to be even more CSR oriented and into the environment than millennials. So that's a nice bright future that we're looking at there. I want to share also this comment from Kelsey Cannabis. Hi, Kelsey. Thanks for joining us. Kelsey shares that she suffers from a brain injury, and cannabis as well as the local brain care center helped change her life. She became a advocate for cannabis education and donates a portion of all profits from presentations back to the community and back to the BCC Center as a win-win for many. And so I think that's a really cool example of what an individual can do. Yeah, so many different opportunities. Margaret or Bridget, perhaps you guys can speak to this. Any CSR stories in the industry or otherwise that didn't go well, and any advice on how to avoid that sort of situation?
I don't have a specific, but I think any initiative where it's not coming from an authentic place, I think is suspect. Actually, I can think of one industry example, and I won't say where, but it was a particular initiative, and it's clearly for profit. It's not, being done in an altruistic manner. And, I guess the interesting thing about consumers is they can sniff that out, a mile away. So, I do really believe, social responsibility should be centered in the core of your brand's value and what it intends to do to speak to your consumer. I have to say, a brand that is, does represent themselves well that way, and, is a good role model. Like I do, Charlotte's Web does a great job of, clearly articulating what their value proposition is, and their story from which they have been born. And I like to use them when we test the way in which we represent our health and wellness orientation and our advocacy for CBD. I feel that that's an important, it has to come from a real and solid place. The converse of that is, when you see inauthentic, programs that are really not intended to do anything but just sort of bolsters, a brand's PR, etc. But then it can go sideways. So I don't know, Bridget, would you agree?
Well, I can't think of anything in the cannabis industry right now, but we can certainly think about big automakers who were saying that they were making emissions and improving the planet, and they weren't. And we don't really need to name that car, but we can all think of some of those stories. And I think that we have to be very careful, because when we talked about CSR earlier in the conversation, we're talking about trust. We're talking about building trust, and so there's a unspoken relationship and a trust that happens between the organization, the companies, the employees, the stakeholders, etc. And we all believe that CSR is moving to improve and make a positive impact, whoever the impact organization is. And so when that doesn't happen, and when we don't have the measures in place to, as we talked about before, deliver on what we said we were going to do, or if there is a breach of trust, or organizations are collecting money and the money doesn't go to the right people, or there's initiatives from products, etc., that have negative experiences, we breach that trust. And so I think at the core, CSR is about trust and accountability and trying to make a positive impact. And if the impact doesn't happen due to mismanagement or whatever, then you actually have a CSR disaster, and you have a very negative impact on your brand and reputation. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's interesting, we've covered a lot on the consumer end, but we have seen in our industry CSR, social good focused campaigns that are patient focused. The Don't Tax Medicine campaign that we've been seeing, and some LPs absorbing those additional taxes to support patients. So this kind of goes back to what you all touched on, is that your audience is really relevant. What matters? So what's the benefit to your audience? And so depending if your audience is a patient, or if it's wellness focused, or if it's rec focused, whatever it happens to be, kind of considering all those angles. And CFAM and Niche are two organizations that exist within our industry that are much more patient focused. So if that's something you're looking for. Another thing I wanted to throw out there as an easy idea is that the blood drives, donating blood is really important right now. And a big question that cannabis consumers like to ask is, can you still donate blood? And the answer is yes. The Canadian Blood Services actually was coming out to our events to promote the fact that you can still donate if you're a cannabis consumer, which I think is really cool, that they're being very transparent about that. Jumping over to the questions here, one from Sarah, our friend Sarah, thanks for joining us. This can be for anyone to answer. How do you recommend building a business case to incorporate a CSR strategy? This is a great question, and what's a great starting place? We know that a lot of people have to do a lot of internal sales around their ideas, and we're wearing lots of hats, and cannabis is moving at the speed of light. So where to start? Trish, did you want to take this one?
Yeah, we were really fortunate that Mimi, our CEO and co-founder, was really on board as quickly as she was, because it's really important to her as well. But the beginning of our strategy and the business case for it really started with looking at a full year and only being focused on one store. So it was really nice to be able to have that small little nest to work within the hyperlocal community, and figure out how we could have a reach that didn't require a lot of friction use-wise. Like, we knew that these packages were going to come to us, so it wasn't like we had to go out and do something. It was also really low friction from a team member work perspective, because we don't have to count these packages. They're just boxed up and they go to TerraCycle and they count them for us. So really being able to make the case that this wasn't going to impact day-to-day operations of our store. I mean, we're seeing anywhere from 900 to 1,300 transactions per day. So we don't want to add to the work of our team members that are already working really hard. So being able to say that this was a really easy portion, and that this dollar amount translated into a monthly amount of this, and monthly goals, it was pretty easy to put all of those numbers together, talk about the impact on the business, and talk about the impact on operations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in my experience, and I'm probably going to relate this maybe to outside of cannabis, particularly large investment CSR programs, where you as an organization, a larger organization, you put your shoulder behind a cause, and it can be hundreds of thousands of dollars or thousands and thousands of dollars that you're putting into the community. I'll give you the example. So I was with Xerox for many years, and we our corporate sponsorship was behind United Way. And when I took over the strategy role, there was a big question mark. So the company would mobilize for weeks and do campaigns, and was getting fatigued, I think, behind the initiative, because I think they lost touch with what was the real impact of the work that was being done, and what's the final mile of the dollars being raised to the community that it would impact. And when you talk about business cases, and that's my life as a strategist in an organization, is developing business cases. We had to the first thing we did was we actually canvassed our employees and said, how important is, social responsibility and social engagement, like having a cause, how important is that to you? And it was resoundingly high. So that was, question one. The second one was, how do you want to give back? And it was interesting that what came back was people wanted to have choice in how they interacted with us to create brand value and social engagement on these causes. So you can imagine we have this big initiative where we're aligned to one cause, and you get all this feedback saying people want choice. So you're like, okay, how do you deal with that? And then the last thing was, do you believe, at this point we were saying, out of these 7 things, what do you what initiative would you feel most passionate that we would line up against? And we put things down like, helping those who are impoverished, feeding children, giving activities to health seniors. Like we put a whole bunch of things, healthy food and water, a variety of unrelated to the initiative, but just what are the causes that you care about? And it became abundantly clear that they wanted to support youth and they wanted to, to feed those who were unable, right? So it was interesting how we took all that feedback and, determined that individuals want to experience the giving. In many cases, experience the giving that they are participating in. So that's why you see things like Habitat for Humanity, what Superette, they want to walk in with the package and say, I did this, I gave this back, I made this contribution, and they connect the dots between their initiative and the activity and how that can create a betterment. So long story short, we made some modifications to the program and modified it and worked with the United Way to say, with every dollar raised, it's 2 meals for someone. And we actually worked with them because they were having trouble finding themselves relevant, and yet their social safety net for the entire, Toronto area was, ensuring that our funds would be directed to feeding, to actually giving healthy meals. So this is a long answer to the concept of, engaging your, to build a really good case for social good, you've got to engage with your employees and with your community, and you have to make it relevant to them so that they can actually experience the good. And I think that, that starts to turn the monetary dimension of this into something that they can tangibly get their heads around. Plus, that then resonates with your customers, etc. So it's just a little story for you.
Mm-hmm.
The customer experience piece is important the whole way along, isn't it? Regardless of what you've got going on for your business, it's always keeping that top of mind. A piece for cannabis that I think remains a little bit more challenging is we're still facing the stigma, and there are some charities that struggle with whether or not they're going to work with cannabis brands, but we have watched that evolve over the past couple years. The Cannabis Act provides additional layers of complications for things like cause marketing campaigns or other really marketing focused charitable campaigns that you see in other sectors. So definitely, if you have any questions about your CSR campaign and how to put that together, Bridget and I would be happy to jump on a call with you and talk to you about what that landscape looks like. One of the comments we had here is, CanTrust had issues with the word trust in its name. So, us as an industry, we're sort of making up for some of the challenges that we've faced. A little bit offside, but a bit of sad news that I did want to mention when you mentioned Charlotte's Web is that Charlotte did pass away yesterday. Yeah, from
Charlotte Spiggy. Mm-hmm.
So
COVID
very
related.
sad news.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And she's like,
wow,
what's happened because of her is unbelievable. So it'll be really awesome to see some of the tributes that really talk about how far things came through that little girl. So sorry, a bit of sadness.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. Jeez.
Yeah. So we're out of questions, and I know we're running out of time, but I thought maybe we could all go through and Bridget, Margaret, Trish, thank you so much for sharing everything today. But I always love to leave with a little bit of tangible advice, and so if you're talking to a marketer today that's struggling to figure out their next step or how to work through a social good CSR plan in this tumultuous time, any little nuggets of advice that you could give them? Bridget, did you want to start?
Sure. I think that, based on what Margaret was just saying and what Trish was saying, I think it's really important to think about when you find your cause or when you decided that you're going to take on CSR, it needs to be embedded across your company. You need to have a value alignment. You have to have team comprehension of the cause and choice and giving back. And then you also need to think about how it's going to to make a positive impact. And one of the things that we should think about as you move forward is that there are financial benefits. There's referrals through business and networking through the CSR program. There's tax credits where possible and beneficial, depending on how you pursue your donations, and that you really create a baseline for your goals, your investment, and your KPIs for each area of the impact. So I just, I'm always thinking about that strategy size and making it relevant, because I find that, when your employees see that the money's happening or the good is happening and the impact is positive, everyone gets behind it.
Awesome.
Wow.
Margaret?
I can't top that, Bridget. I think you said it brilliantly. I kind of end the way I started, having galvanizing behind, a CSR, social responsibility causes that are important to your brand, humanize your brand. And maybe the only thing I'll say, nobody said it, but it's probably, I think it's okay to give permission. Not everybody in your organization might be aligned exactly to the, to the initiative, but as long as, broadly this is aligned, it's strategically relevant, it's credible, and it drives, greater good. I think you have to, everybody does have choice and everybody does have their own opinions. So, I'm kind of giving the audience a buy, like, you're not going to please everyone. I think what you've got to make sure is that it's aligned to the brand, and, and that's why you need really great partners like Marigold to help you communicate these things in a way that, is very, very powerful and can be beneficial for all. So that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Margaret. Trish, over to you.
I mean, I think you picked three very aligned women on this panel. I was going to kind of say what Margaret said. You're not going to please everybody, but make sure that on a baseline, you're lighting up your team in general, because if you have the majority of your team lit up, that's a pretty good indicator that you're doing the right thing, that it aligns with who you are, because those people joined your team knowing what your values were. So if it's aligned with your values, hopefully it's lighting your team up, and that will drive action and purpose and meaningful involvement.
Good job.
Great.
Fabulous.
All right.
Well, thank you so much, ladies. I would remind our audience, there's lots of key ways that you can implement programs, lots of things you can do yourself. Food banks need us right now. So again, a little shout out to our friends at Food Banks Canada. If there's anything that you can do to partner with them individually or as an organization, that will go a long way. Join us next Wednesday. We're here every Wednesday in April. Next week, we're talking about patient insights, how patients are feeling right now during this time. The week after that, we're going to be covering retail and consumer insights and updates. Trish may have a few things to add to that. And thank you again for joining us. Hashtags Marigold Live. The recording will be available after the fact on our blog, and we'll send a link out to all of you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a great
Bye.
day.
Bye.
Great job, ladies.